Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming to you guys another tier list video. This was to be ranking every season finale from The Walking Dead. Alright, so as we get closer now to Dead City Season 2 coming out, about, less than a month now from Season 2 releasing, I thought it'd be a good time to look back on some Walking Dead stuff here. Just recently did a tier list for character deaths ranked, so check that out if you haven't already. I'll try to link it here, and I do really appreciate the support on that one, really great to see. So yeah, I thought this would be a fun one to do next. I am really thinking about doing a characters tier list, so maybe that'll be coming down soon. And then also I have some suggestions for a communities or a locations tier list. So lots of stuff to dive into, and even in this case, maybe a season premiere one next. So please, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, on future tier lists that you'd like to see, or if that is one that would be interesting, a season premieres kind of thing. And obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, the season finales of the show. So lots to dive into, right? A lot of great episodes here, obviously. For a tier list, you want to have, some bad, some good, and that. So there's a couple here, in my opinion, that I don't think are, I wouldn't call great episodes, but there's a lot here that are just like some of my favorite episodes of TV ever, right? So anyway, it should be fun to get into, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. And if you enjoy this one, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. But without any further ado then, let's get into the tier list. Alright, so here we are on the tier list, and I did go ahead and make this myself, so I will try to put the link in the description if you're interested in kind of following along or creating your own kind of tier list out of this. And if you haven't noticed already, there are 12 images in this tier list, so there's 12 items to rank, and you're probably thinking, well, there's only 11 seasons of The Walking Dead original show. How is this possible, or how does this work? So I am going to include both Season 10, Episode 16, and Episode 22, Here's Negan, in this list. Because I thought, if you think about it, if you're just going to rank the season finales, technically that leaves off Season 10, Episode 16, which to me, really feels like the finale of Season 10. And it was meant to be that way, right? Season 10 was only extended because of what was going on at the time, and the whole break there where they did just the 6 additional episodes. So anyways, with all that being said, I am going to rank 12 season finales of the show, and I hope that's understandable. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. And then, of course, for the tiers, I just have 4 of them. I think anything more than that would be too many with only just 12 things to rank. So we have S, A, B, and C, and, that should do us for this. Alright, so first off, our first one to rank, our first season finale here, is TS19, right? The season 1 finale, and I think it'd be hard not to put this one in S tier, really, right? Yes, maybe there could be, more stakes in some of these other episodes, I'll get to them, right? But there's, some battle episodes and stuff like this, and that's not what TS19 is, but if you think about just the series in general, how much impact this one episode has, it's truly, insane, how much they cover here. The huge reveal, right, of that, people die and still reanimate, even if they don't have the disease, even if they're not bit, right? They can still come back as walkers. And I can't remember if that's revealed in this episode, or at least it's kind of like the flashback to this that we then get in season 2. So that happens. Of course, Dr. Jenner is in this episode. And that's another thing, he's only in this one episode of the show. Again, in flashbacks here and there. Of course, he makes appearances. But technically, he's only in this one episode. And he's one of, the more well-known characters in the series, right? So I just think this episode has so much impact on the show, and I think you have to put it in S tier. In terms of the episode itself, you have some interesting dynamics with Shane and Lori going on, and then, Rick, so they're really still going into that kind of triangle there, a love triangle, if you will, where Shane's still trying to get with Lori a little bit, and Lori's now my husband is back, right? We got to stop this, and so trying to push him aside, and we're already getting that tension building, between Shane and Rick in that situation. And then, of course, the end of the episode with Jenner deciding to kill himself, to kill everybody there, blow up the CDC, but at the very end, gives them a chance, lets them out, and an iconic sequence, right, where the CDC's blowing up behind them and they're running out, and it leaves them in a really interesting place as well with season 1. Because again, it gives some answers in this episode that we've kind of been thinking about. And it's really one of the only episodes of the whole show that gives answers like this about the virus and about, kind of the behind the scenes kind of stuff of The Walking Dead, where the rest of the show kind of just turns into, people versus people mainly, and less about the science and that kind of thing, maybe with Eugene's plotline in the seasons, but that doesn't actually end up being anything, right? So some interesting answers it provides, and then just leaves us in a really interesting place where they're kind of back on the road, kind of lost. They don't have a place to go right now, and so it just leaves in a very interesting position going into the season 2 premiere there, which I really like. I think that's a really good episode as well. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in S tier. Like I said, I think maybe some other episodes have higher stakes in them, but I think this one is an absolutely pivotal episode for the rest of the series here. All right, so next then is the season 2 finale here, Beside the Dying Fire. And I don't know, the first time I watched through the show, I really remembered Better Angels, of course, and for good reason. It's to me, it's a top 10 episode of the show all time. An amazing episode, right, with the Shane and Rick final showdown, if you will, and Shane's death. But when I did my rewatch, I think it's a second or third rewatch, both times, I didn't realize how good this episode is, how amazing Beside the Dying Fire really is as a finale episode, where, I think just that whole run in season 2, right, Nebraska basically, and then what do you get, 18 Miles Out, Judge, Jury, Executioner, and then Better Angels, Beside the Dying Fire, I think that's about right. It's that 5-episode, run there where I think it's just amazing. Season 2 is one of my favorite seasons of the show. You can probably see that if you watch my tier list for the seasons as well. But yeah, so this finale really blew me away on those rewatches, and for that reason, I think I gotta go A. I don't know if it would be S. I think probably A for now would be good. But it's a really great episode. If Shane's death had been in this episode, right, if that's how we had started the episode or something, then easy S, right? But this is almost more of kind of the aftermath of, what happens to Shane as, the walkers hear the gunshot, obviously, and they've just been kind of lurking, and we get the kind of scenes here, right, where we figure out that these walkers have been lurking and just waiting for a little sound like that, for a gunshot or something, to where they would just completely flood the farm and they'd be screwed. And that's exactly what happens, right? So they hear the gunshot, they come to the farm, and it's just a really, it's kind of a tragic episode because, Herschel stays to fight. They want to fight, they want to stand their ground and keep the farm, but there's just no hope, right? And then we get the scene here in the picture where Rick and Carl burn down the barn and attract all the walkers to the barn and try to, kind of do it that way and be able to stay at the farm and keep the farm. But at the end of the day, they're just overrun. And it's really you see this, I think, a lot more in other finales and other episodes of the show as we go forward. But it's these kind of episodes where just everything collapses, right, from the group of, the community that they're in. Something like Too Far Gone comes to mind, obviously. And it's just kind of the aftermath, right, of all these characters now being scattered. And then by the end of this finale, they all kind of come together. And then we get that iconic scene, of course, with Rick, saying this isn't a democracy anymore, kind of the start of the Rick-tatorship, if you will. And then one of my favorite moments is when they pan up at the end of the finale here, and we see the prison, right, just right over, I think it's just across a creek or something, from where they are. And we know we get the idea that they're going to discover that prison, and that's where they're going to go in season 3. So yeah, a really great episode, I think, here. And like I said, I don't think I can quite put it in S. It's missing that, there's no big character deaths in this episode. Like I said, they kind of did that in Better Angels. And so, yeah, I don't know. It was a really good finale, but I think there are better ones. We'll just say that. I think TS19, a more impactful episode. All right. So the next is season 3 finale, obviously, Welcome to the Tombs. And this one, yeah, I think I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't know if this is a hot take, maybe. I'm really not sure, but I remember, and now talking about rewatches and that kind of thing, with the rewatches, this episode, whereas the season 2 finale kind of really jumped up for me, this episode actually kind of fell for me a little bit in my ranking here, because I don't know, like when you watch season 3, it really feels like it's building up to a big battle, right? Like it's really building to what we got in Too Far Gone, right? Even though that, it ends up that comes at 8 episodes later in the series. But that's what felt like we were going to get in the season 3 finale. And it's still a great sequence, right? But the way it plays out is just a little anticlimactic, in my opinion, right? Because the governor and, his group arrive at the prison, and it's really just this ambush, right, that Rick and his group set up. Just a brilliant thing, and it's Welcome to the Tombs, right? So they go into the tombs of the prison, if you will. They're ambushed with the smoke and all the walkers there. So it's basically just a trap, right? And then they, shoot them down as they're leaving, basically. And then, that whole thing. But that is, like, essentially the whole fight. Like, that is the battle, really, in this finale between the governor's group in Woodbury and Alexandria, which we've been setting up for, 16 episodes, basically, at this point. We don't get the Rick and Governor confrontation. We don't get... what we get in Too Far Gone. We don't get the battle. We don't get, it's not really a close fight, right? It's a trap. The governor falls right into it, and that's kind of how it is. They're able to get them away from the prison. And though we get an amazing sequence, right, where the governor just completely goes psychotic and just guns down all of his own people and shoots them in the back as they're trying to flee. Just an insane sequence there. It really builds him up, right, for the rest of season 4 and where we kind of catch up with him in Live Bait there. And then, of course, get to Too Far Gone. So, great stuff there. And then, of course, Rick and them go to Woodbury. And even then, it doesn't really feel like, a big battle of them, taking over Woodbury or anything like that. Because it's kind of done, right? Like, the governor is kind of AWOL at this point, and, the people just now are looking for a new home. And so Rick and them kind of welcome them into the prison, and we get the kind of amalgamation of what was left of Woodbury with the our future Alexandrians, we'll say the survivors, and then they all kind of are now going to live together in the prison. So a powerful, way to end it. I will also say that Andrea's death in this finale episode is another reason why I think it would take it down a little bit here in the ranking, because I just think that was in hindsight, not a great decision that the show made, and I talked about this in my character deaths tier list too, but, it felt a little convenient. It felt like she probably could have got out of that room with Milton. It just felt a little off to me. So that would play a part as well in this finale. And I just would have liked to see basically what we got in Too Far Gone in this episode. And that's kind of what it is. We didn't really get that. So I'll put it in B. Not a bad episode at all. Not a bad finale. I think there's ones that are worse on this list that we'll talk about soon. But, I think B is fair for that one. All right. So we have in A tier for sure, this one. That's tough. Ranking these within the tiers is going to be tough. Okay, so we'll put it in A tier. And do I like it over season 2, the finale? I'm going to say yes. I think so, right? So this one I think the start of it is a little slower, right? It's still with Rick and Michonne and Carl, right? And then the Daryl and the Claimers come into things, and we get one of the best scenes of the show, right? Is, where Joe and the Claimers, a few of his guys, are doing, stuff to Carl, or want to do stuff to Carl there. We'll just say that. And, Rick is able to fight Joe off, really, bite his neck, right? And just an iconic picture here with the episode, covered in his blood there. And so he's able to kill Joe. They're able to kill the Claimers, and he's able to rescue Carl. So just an amazing scene there, and really memorable. Obviously, that is kind of what stands out in this finale. And then, you get them, going to Terminus, right? And we don't get really much of any of the other characters because we've got a lot of them, right, in the lead up. That's kind of how they did the back half of season 4. And then we really only see them, I think, at least from my memory, at the very end, right? Where they all get in the train car and they realize that they've all been caught and they're all there. And, a great line, obviously, was Rick. They're screwing, but eventually became they're fucking with the wrong people, depending what cut you watched or if you watch on the DVD or whatever. But anyway, so really great end to the episode. And then, of course, like I said, they go to Terminus. They think it kind of looks okay. It looks like it might be actually good. And then, obviously it ends up that they, figure out they see a few things. They're like, isn't that Glenn's knife? And that kind of thing. And they figure it out pretty quick. And at that point, it's too late. They're trapped in there. And then they get herded into the train car. So, overall, though, again, there's not a big battle, right? We get that in No Sanctuary, which is, easy, probably top 5 episode of the show, right? So we don't get that in this finale. But we do get the showdown with Joe and the Claimers, which I thought is just a really great scene. Yeah, it's not a big battle with a lot of, action and all this stuff, but it's still really great, tense, really great sequence there. And then you get, Terminus, the introduction of them as well. So, I don't know, as I talk about this one, do I like Beside the Dying Fire maybe a little better than it? You know what? Maybe, right? But that moment with Rick and Joe and the Claimers, I don't know. I think maybe you stick it there. So we'll leave it there at the top of A. As we get more in that A tier, we'll see if we want to move it or not. All right, so next then is Season 5, Episode 16, the finale as well, and this one's titled Conquer. I think I'm going to have to put this in the B tier. And I think I'm going to put it below Welcome to the Tombs, I think. This episode, it kind of goes along with my thoughts of just like generally the back half of Season 5. And this is one thing where I push back on some, and don't get me wrong, I really like Season 5. I think it's one of the best seasons of the show. But I do push back a little bit on some people who, say that Season 5 is the best season of the show, or, they say it's their favorite. I mean, that's subjective. That's completely fine. I can see that. But the people who say, it's the best season of the show, yeah, I would push back on that, because the second half of Season 5, I think it's like episode 12, right? Once they get to Alexandria, it does stall a little bit. And I feel like this finale is kind of in that same vein. It's not a crazy, finale. It's not, and again, we don't need a battle every single finale episode, but it did feel very low-key for a finale, right? Basically until, like, the very, last, 5 to 10 minutes of the episode, right? We get some great moments, don't get me wrong, but it's, at that point, because Rick is still, he's just coming off, his fight with Pete, I think, right? He's still recovering from his injuries, and Michonne knocks him out, I think, in the episode before. And so that's kind of the whole first half of this episode. Rick is not really, functioning that much or that well, rather, in the plot of the story. We get Glenn and Nicholas, who go outside the walls, right? And Glenn attacks, or Nicholas attacks Glenn. We get that. And then, of course, Daryl and Aaron find Morgan, right? And so that's a really interesting development. And then, obviously, that makes for a really great ending sequence, where Morgan shows up at the very end. And that was insane to me, watching that. I still remember that, watching that. I think I watched it live on AMC, and that moment, I'm even maybe getting chills now thinking about that moment where, Rick sees Morgan again for the first time. It's an insane moment, so that's really great. And then, of course, the whole thing with Pete, accidentally killing Reg, and then Rick kind of just turning right around and shooting him in the head. And killing him. So a really, tense sequence at the end there. You weren't sure, or, you didn't know what was going to happen, I guess, if they were going to be kicked out of Alexandria, right? That was that whole meeting was about. And then Pete shows up, and it's just chaos after that. So, Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd put it in the C tier because I think, again, that Morgan reveal is a really great moment. And then, of course, the last 10 minutes of the episode is great. But the rest of it, not as memorable to me as a lot of these other episodes. But nothing wrong with it, really. Like, there's nothing that just stands out to me as, oh, that was bad, right? Nothing like that. All right. So next, then, we have the season 6 finale, Last Day on Earth. This is such a big what if, right? Because even if they didn't, even if they just had Abraham's death, let's say, in this finale episode, and they did the cliffhanger maybe with Glenn's death, in the season 7 premiere, and they didn't, save both deaths for that premiere, this would be an easy S tier episode to me. It just is. But I don't think I can put it in S tier because of the fact that they do this cliffhanger at the end, right? I just don't know that I can do it. There's something that still rubs me the wrong way about that. It was just such a, gimmicky thing to do, and obviously at the time it was massive. It was the right decision, to make in terms of viewership, the attention, the buzz. I remember that time. It was absolutely insane to be a part of that, and for all these theories and discussions and how many videos of people trying to analyze it and figure out who he killed and all this stuff. But when you think of it in hindsight now, many years later, and you think back to it, it did feel a little gimmicky. It did feel a little cheap to me, that they had that cliffhanger in there and they didn't show who Negan killed at the end of the finale episode. Now, that's really the only thing about this that I can take down or take it down with, the lineup scene at the end of the season 6 finale, and so many quotable lines. One of my favorite scenes of the entire show, the introduction of Negan. I do really like Negan. He's one of my favorite characters. So, especially his kind of dark humor, I really like that throughout the kind of run of the show, especially season 6, the ending, and then the season 7 stuff. So yeah. Big fan of that. And then just the whole episode is just so well crafted, really. It's just so, we start off and it's, they're trying to get Maggie to the hilltop. It's a very simple thing. And just every step along the way, they're building tension. They're kind of raising the question. I mean, even Simon says, what if this is your last day on Earth? And it's kind of, every roadblock that they go to, right? It's okay, it feels like something is happening here. It doesn't seem like this is just a coincidence each time. And so they slowly build that up as the whole episode goes. And then at the very, last 10 minutes or whatever it is, they're trapped. And we figure out, yeah, this entire thing was orchestrated by the Saviors, who we thought were all dead, right? After Not Tomorrow Yet, right? They go to that outpost. They think that all these Saviors are dead. And boy, were they wrong. Were we wrong as viewers who maybe thought that if you hadn't read the comics or anything like that. But yeah, so just a really great ending. And then, like I said, a really great lineup scene. So I'm going to put this at the top of A. Like I said, probably an S tier episode, but that cliffhanger to me still rubs me the wrong way a little bit. So I don't think I can put it in S, unfortunately. So we're putting it at the top of A, though. A really great episode. All right, so next then is the season 7 finale. What is it? The first day of the rest of your lives, I believe, because the premiere is the day will come when you won't be. This one, I did like it. I did like it. The only thing to me, though, and I think it's probably around A or B here, but the only thing to me is, watching season 7 was such a grueling watch, right? It was almost torturous a lot of the way through season 7, right? Seeing the group beat down, seeing Rick in particular beat down by Negan, and it was just, and it's partly because they stretched it out a little too long. I think that's part of the reason. Though, on the other hand, it did make sense. It did, they had to do that, right? They had to make us feel that way in order to set up All Out War in Season 8, which I think they also kind of stretched out a little too far. But anyway, so it was such a grueling watch all the way through, or almost all the way through. And when you got to this finale episode, I really enjoyed it. It's really great. It's the first kind of victory, if you will, against the Saviors that our group has had, that Rick has had over Negan. And it's great, but I just wanted more, right? Like, I just wanted a little more than what we got. There wasn't any, real major deaths, none of, like, maybe I would have liked to see Simon die, or, one of our main group die, and I guess we get Sasha's death, but I mean, within the battle itself, there wasn't, the stakes didn't actually seem that high for what it was and for how long we had set this up. I don't know. I just remember at the time being a little disappointed, yes, it was a great battle. Yes, it's a victory. I felt awesome, really great to see our group finally fighting back. But I maybe just wanted a little more in the episode, right? A little more. And I also, the timing of the Kingdom and the Hilltop coming in, yeah, maybe a little convenient, right? With Shiva going right as Negan is going to, kill Carl, right? I'm going to kill Carl now, as we get kind of like the mini lineup with him and Rick. So, a little bit of a convenient timing there. And yeah, I just would have liked to see maybe a little more after all that time we had seen. But like I said, as I mentioned, Sasha, and you see in the picture here, that's kind of how the episode kicks off, is that Sasha kills herself, right, commits suicide with the pills that Eugene gives her, and she ends up coming out dead, right, as a walker, which completely shocks Negan and really gives them a chance to fight back. Now, I talked about this in my character deaths video, pretty convenient the way that went. Like, it literally went the best possible way that Sasha could have ever hoped, in that she would be a walker and that she would walk right out and tackle Negan right off the trailer and like completely distract everybody. So a little convenient there as well. So I don't know. There's a few things in here. I don't think I can put it in S tier. Would I put it in A, with these episodes? I think probably, right? I think maybe the bottom of A tier there. Again, because I had a couple problems with it, but overall, a really great, episode to see them fighting back finally. So there was certainly some good stuff there for sure. All right, so next up is the season 8 finale. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to go C tier with this one. Again, speaking of the season 7 finale, being a little disappointed, right, with the way that maybe the lack of, kind of big stakes or stuff with that, last battle in there. This one is like that times 10, maybe, right? Like this episode, and again, to be fair, we did get a lot of battles along the way of season 8. We got a lot of the confrontation. Episode like The Key comes to mind, where Negan and Rick, that was really almost like their final showdown, or the final, one-on-one fight between the two. So we got those episodes along the way, but the way they built up to this finale really felt like, even, you see them in the field, it was like everybody was lined up on the field and going at each other. This was going to be massive. Like, this was going to be the biggest thing we'd ever seen in the show, the big battle to end off the season. And it was really over before it even began, right? Because Eugene rigs the bullets and they backfire on the Saviors, and it ends up being like such a quick sequence, really, to the point where they get them to surrender, and the battle that we thought was, and we get a little bit of it, right? Don't get me wrong, but it was not a long battle. Really did not last, I don't, at least from my memory, like longer than 5 minutes or so. They get the Saviors to surrender, and it's kind of over, right? I mean, obviously, it's a great, scene between Negan and Rick, and him, slitting his throat, with the, with that piece of glass, right, from the tree or whatever it was. Really great. Like, that's a really great scene. And then, obviously, in hindsight, I love that they kept Negan alive. I love the decision at the end of this finale where he says, save him, right? Go save him. But at the time, honestly, when I saw this episode and, after I just saw that, the Saviors surrender pretty easily. I don't know. I was like kind of iffy on that. I was like, really? Like, they're going to save Negan after this? Really? Because I was kind of already underwhelmed by the battle, and now I'm like, oh, they're just going to save him now after this? But I don't know. I feel like they maybe could have done that a little better in terms of that scene where they just, save him after he slits his throat. Maybe just don't, maybe just save him to begin with, or I don't know. There's a lot of different things that I think they could have done better in this episode, and I was just pretty disappointed. Like I said, we had payoff throughout the season, but as a finale episode, it was a little disappointing in terms of the payoff, and in this moment too was great. I don't want to forget that, Maggie, pleading with Rick to not save Negan, in this scene, and that's a really great dynamic that they set up for obviously season 9, and I mean, even in Dead City now, we're seeing this dynamic still. So that was great. It was great. But yeah, the execution here, not that great. I think they really could have done a better job with this finale. And, obviously, they following the comics, right? But I don't know. Some of this stuff maybe just didn't translate as well to the screen. I think they could have done a little bit better with this episode. So that's just my opinion on the season 8 finale. And it has to be mentioned too, like, this was 2 seasons of this savior versus our survivor dynamic with Rick versus Negan and the groups kind of fighting, the culmination of all-out war. That was part of it too, right? Like, if this was just maybe 1 season of all that buildup and all that development, maybe I would have felt differently about this, but to, watch this for 2 years of my life, right? And then we finally get to this finale, yeah, it felt a little underwhelming, right? All right, so next then is the season 9 finale titled The Storm. And again, I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but this is easily the worst for me. This is easily the worst finale on this list, I think, of this tier list. And to be fair, I mean, really, effectively, the season finale is the episode before, titled The Calm Before, obviously. That's where the big payoff happens with Heads on Pikes, and we get that kind of conclusion to that. This episode is almost really like a bottle episode in a way, but it's just kind of slid on at the very end of the season. But, it is the season finale, so, I have to rank it as that for this list. But yeah, this episode, yeah, it was kind of interesting to see, The Walking Dead in the winter, see these characters in these kind of different conditions that we haven't really seen before in the show. But beyond that, the execution of it wasn't that great. Some of the logic here didn't really make sense with some of the walkers being frozen, and then some of them were frozen, but some of them could reanimate. And it just, to be honest, it didn't look that good with the snow. It didn't look all that good. You could tell that it was kind of fake and the effects of it. So, I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking here, but it didn't quite pay off the way I think they maybe thought it would, or maybe it did for other people. Unique, cool idea, but I think just in the actual practicality of it, it didn't actually turn out to be that great. One of my favorite moments from this was the Negan going to rescue Judith, right? Is that what it is? Or is it Judith rescuing Negan? I can't remember which one it is, but I did like that, and that's where they kind of started the whole Negan and Judith kind of dynamic, which I did really like in later seasons. And up to this point too, but I liked that, but that's honestly like one of the only things I can recall from this episode here. And I also really didn't like that the kingdom just fell like very easily. I think it's just at the beginning of this episode, that the pipes freeze or something, and so they completely have to abandon the kingdom. That was a little convenient for me as well. So yeah, to me, again, maybe it's not fair to judge it versus a lot of these other finales, but it's the worst finale, in my opinion. All right, so next then, to me, we're not getting that much better. It is the Season 10, Episode 16 finale called A Certain Doom. And I don't know. I think it's going in C tier for me, but I'm not sure which tier. Is it better than the Season 8 finale? I don't think so. I think it honestly may go there in C. Not a huge fan of this episode. I did talk about Beta's death in the character deaths tier list video. Not a fan of that at all. Just super anticlimactic for what they had set up Beta as the whole season, and even just the Whisperers. So I think that extends beyond just his death. It's just like the group in general. This episode just felt very anticlimactic, where the way they set it up in the episode before this, the tower, right, it really seems like this is going to be an insane situation. They're completely trapped, nowhere to go. The Whisperers, have really got them cornered here at this hospital that they're at, I think, right? And I think it was actually the same location as they used for season 5, right, when Beth was at Grady Memorial. And you see some of the pictures, so kind of funny there. But anyway, so they're at this, I think it's a hospital, the tower there, and it just seems like a really, dire situation. And in this episode, the way it plays out, like, it doesn't feel like that. It felt very, or not very, but too easy for our characters to get out of this. And yeah, I don't know, like, Beta's death is very underwhelming. Just a lot of this. And again, like I said in that video, the fact that we also had to wait months and months to see this episode, and we were anticipating it for that long, that obviously does not help. I think, if I rewatched season 10 and got to this episode, maybe I might think a little more positively about it. But just with my memory of that, my impression of the episode, waiting months to see it just felt very anticlimactic, and just not that, not that impressive to me. And I guess my expectations maybe were a little high, I guess, but still, like, for the end of the whole Whisper arc to be this, I don't know. It's kind of actually like the season 8 finale to me. Like, it's similar, right? It's like, okay, we were building up to this for, in this case, like a season and a half, right? I expected a little more. I expected a little more payoff here for what we had endured, what we had waited for all this time, and we didn't really get that in this episode. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. To me, yeah, very similar episodes. I think I would give this one the edge just because I do like kind of the ending of the episode. I think it sets up an interesting dynamic with Maggie and Negan and Rick and all that. So maybe we'll stick that above the season 10 there. All right. So next then is Here's Negan, season 10, episode 22. Yeah, this is an S tier episode for sure. And I don't know. I mean, it would be tough to put it up. I think we're going to stick TS19. We're going to leave that first. I think Here's Negan, I would have trouble putting it over because in some ways, does it really conclude a season-long arc, or kind of function in that way? Not really, right? But is it an S-tier episode? Is it probably arguably a top 5 episode of the series? Yes. So I think you got to have it in S-tier. A really great episode. I mean, just and to be honest though, I still would have liked to see a mini series out of Here's Negan. I think that just would have been a better approach at the time. I know it would have been really difficult to do, and basically impossible, right? To have Jeffrey Dean Morgan, in still the episodes of the regular show and somehow do another mini-series about it. I don't know, but I still really would have liked to see even more than we got in this episode, which was great, but I would have liked to see even more. The only kind of nitpick I had of this one is just, like, it went pretty fast. Like, I wanted to see, more of how he developed into what he became, even though it is great, right? A great kind of arc in this episode. Some great acting from him and his real wife, right? Hilary Burton Morgan as Lucille in the episode. And a really great sequence, right, where we see him get his bat, wrap the barbed wire around it, fight back against those guys. Just as a contained episode, just felt really well thought out. Like, the development was great, the arc was great, like I said, the acting was great. Just, like, everything in here just really worked on all cylinders to me. And yeah, it's just a really great episode, right? Really great episode. And again, as a finale, right, there's a few connections to kind of the ongoing story. A big one is, I think, in current times, right? Some of the only current time stuff that we see in the episode is him. I can't remember if he throws the bat, Lucille, in the fire or he buries it in I think he recovers it from the ground and then he throws it in the fire. But either way, he's kind of throwing away Lucille, throwing away that last part of him, right? That last part of that life, and he's choosing to move forward, as a different man, as a different person now. And that's just a huge development, for him as a character. And like I said, the dynamic with Maggie and him and Rick or not Rick at this point, but Maggie and Egan, right? And just the whole group's thought of him and all that stuff. Just a really great thing. So yeah, as a kind of, the added on 6 episodes here, I think it really works well. And like I said, to me, just one of the best episodes of the series. Got to put that one in S tier there. All right, so last then, this one I was really on the fence about. It's the season 11 finale, right? The series finale, in fact, titled Rest in Peace, season 11, episode 24, right? This one I'm really on the fence about. I'm not sure if it should be an S or A tier. I thought this was, for a series finale, I thought it was really great. Just really great. As a season finale, really just tying up. It really was just tying up kind of the last third, right, of the season, because the first 2 kind of had their own conclusions. But this last third with the Commonwealth, and I felt like it was an interesting kind of battle or fight, right, where they ignited the kind of the sewer grates, right, and just caused this explosion really, and this fire, and they were able to basically take the Commonwealth, arrest Pamela, right, and kind of win this battle and take the Commonwealth, not for themselves, obviously the people there, but basically take control of it from Pamela and kind of oust her as the leader and arrest her. So that sequence was good. I think the effects work. Some people commented on at the time. Maybe not the greatest, but it was just a great sequence, a satisfying payoff there towards the end of the episode. Then of course we get Luke's death earlier in the episode, which it wasn't insane. He wasn't a massive character, but it did kind of set the stakes, I think, for the rest of the episode, and showing that, there's going to be loss here. Like, this is these are the stakes, right? We're setting them pretty high at the beginning of the episode here, seeing him die. And then, of course, it was, I think, so Judith, right? We still weren't sure what would happen to her. And so we get that kind of resolved and see that she is going to survive being shot, right, in the previous episode. I believe that's in the previous episode there. And then, of course, you want to talk about the massive one after kind of that big, battle sequence, if you will. It is Rosita's death. And I think this is one of the best, played out deaths, if you will, of the entire series. Like, just the execution here was just so great. I do, small little critique of the actual scene itself. I would have liked to just see it happen. I think it was a little convenient, the way that they, these walkers are all kind of crowding her, and then she just kind of busts out of the crowd and is, alive, but it turns out that she got bit. I just would have liked to see that happen. But anyways, the way it plays out, though, after that, with her, keeping it from people, and then eventually she does have to reveal it to Gabriel and some of the others, and just the way that she's able to go out on her own terms, such an emotional sequence, really, and some great acting from Christian Serratos, obviously, but to kind of seal the deal, right, basically end the show on, the death of really like a top 10 character in the series, to see that, I think is just such a really great way to end the series, to end this season. It just felt really complete, and it was a really effective death. And then, of course, my favorite part of the episode, I said this, while I was watching it, I'm like, if we don't see Rick in this finale episode, I'm going to be pissed. I needed to see it, and of course we got it at the very end of the episode, basically almost like a prologue to the Ones Who Live miniseries that, of course, we got now a couple years ago, right, or last year, and a little disappointing at the end of it, but anyways, a really great way to end off, like I said, kind of a series finale and kind of opening the door, showing us what's next in the universe. I thought that was a really nice touch, and just something I needed to see. So, as I've talked about this now a little bit, I don't know that I'll put it in S tier. I'm not sure on that. It's a great series finale. It is. Some great moments like this with Daryl and Carol there as well. Daryl riding off. Yeah, you know what? Is it an S tier? I mean, I don't really have anything wrong with it, really. So you know what? Yeah, I might put it in S. I might put it at the bottom of S there, under Here's Negan. Yeah, I really, yeah. It's really because Last Day on Earth, I think it's a great episode. The cliffhanger really kind of bugs me, though, a little bit about that. This one, nothing really bugs me about it. You know, it's just a really great finale for both the season and the series as a whole. And, you know, again, setting up the rest of the universe. So we'll leave it at that. That's where I'll put it, in the S tier. So that just about does it then for all of our 12, technically, finales ranked here. Maybe I thought, you know, there'd be more S tier episodes in here. But this A tier, I mean, these are all still great episodes. You know, here, great episodes of The Walking Dead. And, you know, B, kind of that mid tier, I guess. And then C, you know, gotta be honest, I think those 3 finales are definitely the worst out of this list. So, anyways, I guess that'll just about do it. I think I'm good with all that. I don't think I need to move anything around. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, of course, on my ranking, if you agree or disagree, obviously. And, of course, you know, where would you put these if you do disagree? Love to hear from you guys and, you know, hear some more of your thoughts on these finales. And, obviously, let me know if you would like to see a season premiere tier list here, maybe a mid-season finale list as well. Definitely some opportunities here for ranking some more episodes. So, yeah, love to hear from you guys. Love to hear your thoughts. But that'll just about do it for this one. So stay tuned for more tier list videos. I do want to do maybe at least one more before Dead City hits. And then, of course, I will, you know, be covering Dead City in some shape or form on the channel. Not sure if I'll be doing reviews for every episode or anything like that. But, you know, probably talking about it in some way, shape, or form, like I said. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. But anyways, that'll just do it for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. And we'll see you then in my next video.